All right, so welcome to the very first episode of the Good Creature podcast. This is a podcast by Mission Church in Morganton, North Carolina, and we are going to explore what it means to enjoy God, glorify Him in all things, looking at the many good creatures of His creation, how they point us to Him. Whether it's through art, culture, or everyday moments of life, we want to walk with wisdom and discernment, seeing His light in all things. And so we are your hosts for this show. I think we want to have some guests on here at some point to kind of go into different things, but lead pastor Billy Glosson, associate pastor Michael Tooley. And so to kind of kick off this pilot episode, we kind of wanted to take a little bit of a look back at the follow-up, talk a little bit about my title as associate pastor, and then have you explain why the name Good Creature. So first, let's just talk about the follow-up and why this is not the follow-up podcast anymore.
For sure. Yeah, we talked about it a little bit. So part of it was with Michael coming on staff, we knew that we would have more space to, again, do the podcast. So before doing the podcast was a little bit challenging just because the podcast takes time, right? There's some stuff behind the scenes, and Michael had a job previously working in videography and film editing and things like that. And so allowing him to kind of use some of his skill set. But really the follow-up we felt like was just kind of a one note. It was a retrospective look at the sermon, and we do that in our community groups. So we felt like there is something there that we felt was valuable in that discussion, but there's more that we could do. And also there's a way that we could invite people into our church, into the discussion. And so we came up with some ideas of different things, and also just creativity. And like Michael had some ideas that we wanted to explore. So.
Yeah, I would say that the follow-up was primarily a sermon application podcast.
For sure.
And so we want to show breadth and depth and how all of Scripture, and specifically the gospel, how it interacts with everyday lives.
Yep. Because it's God's world, right?
And it really does impact every aspect. There's not an aspect of your life that the gospel doesn't kind of break into. The analogy I heard from a former pastor when I lived in Colorado was like shafts of light coming into a dark shed. That's how the gospel kind of peers into our lives. And so that's kind of how that came about. The elder team met and offered me a full-time position at the beginning of February. And so this has been in the works for quite a while, and something that was kind of like the follow-up was very much, it was also kind of preferential of like, do you feel like recording it today?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah.
And so we've made plans for this, of what this wants to look like. And so we have the different sections of this it's going to start with, just kind of the intro, and then, coffee with a pastor, which I'll explain that in a little bit. We're going to look back at the sermon. So we are going to have some sermon application, but we're really going to try to put that into like everyday rhythms. Then we might have a game or two. And then we'll close off every episode with a Good Creature highlight, which is basically some food or drink or activity that points us in a unique way to the glory of God. So as I mentioned that, talk to me about the name Good Creature.
Yeah, so this is a funny thing. So this is not the first Good Creature podcast that I have done. So a few years ago, several years ago now, probably like 8 or 9, I did a podcast called the Good Creature Podcast with a similar scope and idea of like celebrating the good creatures in the world. And it was a narrative podcast. And so if you don't know what that is, it's something like Serial or This American Life, like something like that. And it's a lot.
It was very
of work.
epic.
It was a lot of work. So the first episode, I was like, this is going to be such a great, I had all this energy. And then if you've never edited anything, there's nothing as soul sucking and creativity sucking as editing, I feel like. Unless that's your bread and butter, but for me, it took so much time that it never came to fruition. So the concept of good creature comes from the Reformation. So Martin Luther, during the Reformation, would go from town to town, and he would be teaching people, again, the Bible for the first time in their tongue. So they were understanding the Word of God, and they would celebrate, and they would have these big feasts. And Luther was a home brewer. He brewed beer, and again, it's Germany, so everybody else would brew beer, and so they would always have this big toast before the feast, and he would hold up a glass of beer, and he would say, Guter Creator, which means good creature. And the idea is that good creatures should stir our hearts for a good creator, a good father, that we would see and savor the good things of this world. C.S. Lewis in the Screwtape Letters talks about little joys, right, that should push us to a creator. And that I believe it's Screwtape writing to Wormwood, like, hey, don't let him enjoy like the simple joys of life, because ultimately that's going to lead him to God. Like, don't let him do that. And so I think if we have the right lens, a gospel lens in which we look at the world, a simple thing like a cup of coffee, your child laughing, a great hike, a really like beautiful piece of art, all those things can stir our souls for something greater.
Yeah, it really and it kind of opens your mind and your eyes to see like that every good gift is meant to point to the giver.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this a lot with different sermons. We've talked in community groups like at length of this concept of idolatry and how it really whittles down to any good gift that you appreciate more than the giver. It's like, and that gift can't satisfy you in the way that that God can. So, so that's kind of an introduction to what this is going to look like, what it's going to be, and where Good Creature comes from, just to kind of recap everything we just talked about. And so, Billy we were going back and forth talking about what could the podcast be, how could it be different, and how could we make it broader? And then the conversation that always happens when you're creating something different or new is, what are we going to call it?
Yeah.
And I said, why not Good Creature? And he goes, I don't want to do that podcast again. I was like, no. We're just going to hijack the name.
Yes.
It's funny thinking about it too, because you said 9 years. I'm like, man, you guys were just kids. Like, Sammy wasn't around yet.
No.
Like, I think you were talking consistently about church planning, but
sure. The world's also a lot different, right? It'd be a lot easier to pull off now than it was then.
There's so much like AI editing stuff that you could like probably just plug it in and be like, make this epic, and, and it would do it for you. So yeah, it's interesting. But anyway, next we are going to move on to a segment called Coffee with a Pastor, and this is basically what we're going to do every week, or whenever we record this podcast. I don't know if we'll do it every week. I don't want to make promises that I can't deliver on. But we are going to feature some specific delicious craft coffee.
Right.
And then we are going to be posting to social media in the future question boxes, so that if you have a question that you would like to ask a pastor, disclaimer, no guarantee that your question will end up on the air.
Right.
We are going to try to use discretion with that. But if you have a question that you've thought, man, I would love to get coffee with the pastor and ask him a question, you can do it this way. Hey, Billy, I got a question for you.
Yeah, what's up, man?
So, preached on this marriage sermon on Sunday, and you said we have to build with the right materials. You have to build on the right foundation, which is the foundation of Jesus. So let's say I heard that message and I recognize I'm building on the wrong foundation. What is my first step in taking a step in the right direction?
I think step one is confession and repentance. So I would talk to my spouse and say, hey, have that kind of first question, like, hey, what foundation am I building on? And what foundation are you building on? And what do we agree that like it's not Christ? If that's the case, then I think you start with a prayer of like repentance and confession. And then from that, I would say, you start to kind of just build some framework. So that's when I would invite my community in. I would say, hey, C group, discipleship group, just accountability. We realize that we've been building our marriage on the kids. All of our schedule is aligned to all their games and their after school activities. The only thing we ever talk about is the kids. We never really talk about each other. We never talk about the Lord. So that's kind of where I would start. Is confession, repentance, and then inviting community in. Those are the first steps I would take.
Okay. Second question. What is the best practical advice someone gave you before you were married that to this day has stuck with you?
Husband, be the first to apologize. I think that has like landed with me because again, too often your pride gets in the way, and I would say spouses outdo each other in honor, and so there's a real case in which both of you should be quick to apologize. But specific to me, that was advice given to me was, hey, always be the first to apologize, and that has like lasted for years.
You want to name drop who said that?
I think it was Kevin Larson.
Good old Kevlar.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. What are you drinking? What are you making?
This is water bean coffee that you gave me. It is their Ethiopian. So it's a medium roast. It's supposed to taste, it says notes, potpourri like lavender with mild
potpourri.
Mild dried stone fruit tart. So
Stone fruit is my favorite.
Do you know what stone fruit is?
When I'm drinking coffee, I'm like, notes of stone fruit.
I think aren't stone fruits like fruits that have like a hard core, like a peach or something like that?
No, I think it's like when there's like some rocks underneath some fruit that's growing.
That's it.
I gotta say, I'm really digging your hat.
Thanks. I like yours too.
I like it a lot.
This was unplanned, but
it was unplanned.
It's a funny.
But we have enough matching.
We do. We
swag.
have similar hoodies and T-shirts from concerts and conferences, and this came from the Gospel Coalition conference, which we just got back from.
Shout out to Midwestern.
Yeah, Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. Funny enough, I almost went there. That's a story for another time.
Yeah,
I was like enrolled, and then
but we went to their booth at T4G, and they were giving out shirts that were like specific to your state.
Yeah, they were great.
Those guys know.
They know how to do merch, man.
Merch and marketing.
They get you to their table.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about our sermon series that we just started. This new sermon series we're in. We started a sermon series called Marriage on the Rock.
Yep.
I almost said Built on the Rock because of your
because of my mistakes in the reels.
Yeah. Solid as a rock. So we started this series called Marriage on the Rock, and the rock, of course, being Christ. And so we began on Sunday in the book of Matthew, chapter 7, and it's the Jesus saying, who follows my commands is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. So he says the wise person is the one who hears his words and puts them into practice. So what does that look like in real life? And I guess the question for you is like, where do you find it easy to put into practice the words that Jesus has, and where do you find it difficult to obey him? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so we talked about this in our community group this week, just this idea of like, what does this look like, right? So I used the analogy we used on Sunday was that we're called to build on a firm foundation, which is Christ, but then we're called to build with Christ-like materials, build with the right materials. And so the two passages that come to mind are Colossians 3, where it talks about what we put on and what we take off, and then Galatians 5, the fruits of the Spirit. And so the commands of Christ really is everything preceding this kind of ending parable in the Sermon on the Mount. It's all of these different calls of like the golden rule and like, not being anxious and seeking the Lord and all those different kinds of things. And so I think for me in marriage, it is easy to want to build my own kingdom, right? So if we go back in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, seek first the kingdom and all these things will be added unto you. Often, I don't want to seek first Christ's kingdom. So I'm not going to instinctively put on compassion, kindness, graciousness, understanding. What does that mean practically? It's nighttime. Sammy is down for bed. That's my son. And we're in our bedroom. We put this chair that used to be used for nursing. It's super comfortable. Now it's in our room. And I use that to like read my Bible in the morning. But usually what happens is I'll be sitting in that chair. Hannah will be laying in bed. And we'll like look at each other and we're both like, do you want to like hang out and talk and connect? Or do you just want to like scroll on Instagram? And the easier thing is for sure just to like endlessly scroll. Mm-hmm. Is that necessarily sinful? No, but it can lead to neglect. And so for me, I think, just the value and the difference between like intentional, like investing and like putting on things of like understanding and hearing where my spouse comes from is an investment so that later when we have interactions and maybe I disagree or there's frustration, we've been building with the right materials. We've been building on a sure and steady foundation. Hopefully what comes out then is more naturally good fruit, more naturally like the fruits of the Spirit. But often what comes out is my selfishness, what I want, how I want it.
Yeah. So this question is kind of intriguing to me. Like, is there any commands of Jesus that you find easy to obey?
I mean, sometimes, right? Like if I get up in the morning and, I've gotten up early and I've got a good cup of coffee and I'm like sitting in the Word. Yeah. In those moments, like it feels like enticing, because I think the way of Jesus is the way of freedom. And when I'll say this. When I am obedient to the Lord and am in the Word and I realize I'm not capable, right? I'm insufficient, that I am selfish and prone to myself, but I am willing to admit that. It is so much easier then to delight in serving my wife. So I think of Philippians 2. We think of the humility of Christ. Paul tells us to consider others more significant than ourselves. I'll come home and I know my wife's overwhelmed. It's been a busy week. We got t-ball practice. We got this meeting we got to go to. We got everything going on. And I see the dishes in the sink and I'm like, man, I want to love my wife and consider her more important than myself and just go ahead and do these dishes. I think that's a moment where it's like delightful, but then there are times where it's hard. And I think those are the times when I'm like focused in on myself.
Yeah. Like it makes me think of Hurricane Helene. It's probably one of like 4 stories that I can tell of like actively trying to like serve my wife sheerly out of my delight in her and not hoping to get some gratitude, not hoping to get any kind of outcome from that. Because a lot of times like there is this like, even if it's subtle in the bottom of our hearts, we don't see it until it doesn't happen. Right. So you're like, I'm going to do this. I love her. She's great. And then there's no thanks. And you're like, oh
yeah.
And this kind of bleeds into your next question of like the storms come, they don't create the cracks, they reveal them.
Yeah.
So the suffering doesn't, like her lack of thanks doesn't reveal anything but my motivation. So, but Helene happened and we were in 2 different homes. We were doing respite care for the first time and we didn't have power or water back. This other family did. So Rachel was with these young kids over there. I was in a dark home with our animals. And the day before we were like forecasted to get our power back, I used a borrowed battery generator thing and I cleaned the whole house. Like I vacuumed, I dusted, I did all the dishes because I was like, my wife is coming home.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't expecting to get a little emotional there, but it's like that week was so freaking hard for a lot of people. But that I feel like is kind of analogous to what we're talking about as far as marriage goes, because like Christ's call for us to repent, Christ's call for us to abide, Christ's call for us to walk in wisdom is like this delightful, like the bride is coming home. Like he wants to present the church. And so it is a call to an invitation. It is a delightful invitation.
One of the things that came to mind when you were sharing that is the book we're reading together, Rare Jewel of Christian Contentment by Jeremiah Burroughs. It's a Puritan classic, but he talks about this idea of contentment. And one of the things that he says is that if there be any like goodness or gift of God in us, but God removes himself, like that gift will fester. And I love that because it's this continual reminder of like God's delight to use weakness. And we were talking to a member this week and just like sharing together, and they were bringing about the jars of clay analogy from Corinthians. That like, hey, I know the Lord wants to use me, but I feel so broken and weak and not good enough, and yet He delights to shine His glory through the cracks and brokenness in me. But also the inverse of that is that if we try to like pour out from an empty vessel, it's going to come out poorly. And so like we need the Lord to give us the strength and the ability to love our spouses, to love our children, to love one another in His power.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a great one-to-one, but it keeps popping up in my head. Something I spoke with a counselor about recently as it pertains to just, doing the whole parenting gig. And he said that he was reading a book and the author described the Garden of Eden as a world full of yeses with only one no. And so he just used this kind of analogy of like you're constantly depositing and withdrawing from one another, and you have to deposit enough yeses to cover the no's type thing. So that's like good. Applies to parenting, but I also think it applies to our marriages where we are constantly depositing grace, and it has to, what am I trying to say? We have to be able to cover the balance. So we have to like fill up on the Lord so that we're not like writing checks we can't cash.
Right.
And so I think that's what it comes down to is like, man, I know I'm covered by the grace of Jesus. And so I know I can go into this situation with a different attitude, and love my wife well. I like this other question here. What habits or patterns might be slowly wearing away at the structure of your faith, relationships, or marriage? What's one way you can guard what God is building in your life right now? I like that question because something you said on Sunday is like most marriages don't explode, they erode. Mm-hmm. I really love that because it's so freaking true. It's death by 1,000 cuts. It's kind of like no one really wakes up one day and they're like, I'm going to destroy my marriage today. It's like it's 1,000, it's 1,000,000 little compromises of like, oh, I'm not, that flirtation.
Sure.
I can ignore that. I can let that slide. But yeah, so talk a little bit about that. What are some habits that can erode?
Yeah, I think if I had to like think of the things in my own life, the what dominates your discussion is really important. And so often like you can even see like, hey, we've been talking, but really we're not talking. Like we're talking about the kids, we're talking about work, we're talking about our week, but we're not talking about each other. And if you don't have like a consistent check-in with your spouse, you should, right?
Yeah.
You really should like set aside time. And I mean, obviously a weekly date night is ideal. And that doesn't mean you have to go spend money, right? It doesn't mean that you have to like go out and do the song and dance. Like it means like maybe it's like you go like sit outside in your yard and just like look at each other and see each other face to face and have that conversation.
I will, if it's okay to interrupt, I will add that a date night doesn't mean you have to go spend money, but this is maybe for the husbands out there, or we manage our money together, but I'm like the one who does like the spreadsheet.
Sure.
This should be a priority in your budget.
Absolutely.
And so not every date night needs to be extravagant, but you should.
You should spend money.
You should spend money on
your
spouse.
You don't have to spend money, but you should spend money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important. I would say like the habits, like look at the fruits of the Spirit and ask if those things are evident in you. And then think about your phone habits. That's massive. Michael and I have even talked about that. And like, I get so many dings and bells and whistles throughout the day because of like different things going on, like someone wanting to meet up or like, I think I need to get done. And if I'm like glued to my phone while I'm trying to talk to somebody, that does not show presence. Also, I'm not present because I'm distracted. And so I think putting your phones away is super important. I think doing things together, resting together matters. There's so many like little like bitty habits. And the thing about habits are they're not habits until they're habits. So they're going to feel weird, right? The first couple times you put your phone away, like if you intentionally do that, it's going to be like, oh, but I want to know what's going on. Like, for me, I'm a nerd and like, I like the draft. And so the NFL draft just happened. It's like, I'm wanting to read. There's no games happening. Nothing has changed, right? The only difference is now this person is on this team. Nothing has happened. There's been no mini camp. There's nothing. And yet I want to read about all these players and like watch these videos and stuff. And it's like, that can wait. It's not, that's a bad thing, but that shouldn't dominate my entire evening every evening. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's interesting too. Like the phone thing is so funny because we are so incredibly like arrogant when it comes to like how strong we think we are.
Sure.
And we don't know that these devices, like billions of dollars have gone into this industry to get your attention.
Mm-hmm.
It's all marketing. It's all advertising. It's designed to suck you in and keep you in. And so to think that like I'm smarter and stronger than like the world's billionaires,
right?
Like, and the people that write algorithms and code, like, no, like this is a powerful device that can be used for good.
Yeah.
And
you have a real and present enemy that does not want you to seek the Lord and seek your spouse.
Yeah.
Right. So like before marriage, this is a countless thing that happens all the time. I think one indicator, and this will come up more throughout the series, but is intimacy. Like what is the barometer of your intimacy? Like before marriage, every couple struggles with like pushing the line, like what's okay, what's not okay. And then after marriage, intimacy like is down in the tank. And it's like, we're not together. We're not syncing up. We're not seeing each other. And it's like, do you think there's a common denominator of someone who wants to destroy you and undo you?
Yeah. I think it was one of our elders, Brad Wilcox, said that. I don't know if it's a direct quote from him or if he heard it from somebody else, but he said, before you're married, Satan is trying to get you to have sex. And then after you're married, he's trying to keep you from having sex.
Yep.
And he's going to throw the lesser lovers at your face.
Absolutely.
So yeah, man, really good stuff, really good practical things, but also just, kind of getting to the heart of like, I'm reading, the Silo series, the Silo trilogy, and I just finished book 2. And there was this one line, when it comes to like sci-fi fiction, I don't really think that I'm going to pull quotes from it or anything, but he said this was like the passing end of a sentence, and it really stuck out to me. He goes, "A habit not even time could touch." And so what that is, the reason that comes to mind is like, this takes intentionality. Just like the spiritual disciplines matter for your walk with the Lord. They don't earn your favor. They don't change your status as like better Christian, but they affect your health.
Right.
They affect your ability to respond in grace versus not responding in grace. In the same way, like Rachel and I had a check-in every week for like such a long time. And then like we stopped once, and then it's those little exceptions along the way.
So habits are hard to build and easy to break.
It's been like 3 months since we've had a check-in, Yeah. And the weeks that we have those check-ins are always better. They're always better because we are on the same page. We both feel seen, but yeah.
If I had to like, so people ask a lot, like, what should I do? Like, there's so many habits that are good to cultivate. Like, what's the one habit that I would encourage you to do would be to pray more.
Yeah.
I would say interrupt your discussions with prayer, right? Like, so
interrupt your fights with prayer.
Yes. And that has happened, like, I would say both times from one or the other of us, where Hannah will stop and be like, hey, can we like pause for a second? Like, we need to pray. And then same time, like we've been in the car before, and I'm like, I'll just start praying, and it's kind of jarring, but like we have to, man, like, because we have a real and present enemy. And like the thing is, Jesus doesn't say you're strong enough, you're capable, right? He says, greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. It's not that you're stronger, it's that he's stronger. Yeah. And we have to be those who are honest enough to admit our weakness and our dependence on the Lord. So if you're looking for one habit to cultivate, pray together, pray often, pray regularly, interrupt each other with prayer, pray.
Well, and I'm thinking of 1 Peter, where it says, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way. And like men have a kind of an over tendency to try to like nitpick apart what the wife is saying and
let
try
me
to
fix it. Yeah.
And dude, 100% of the times that I've done that with my wife, it's not gone great. 100% of the times that I've slowly approached her and just, I'll either ask or I'll just start praying. It goes great.
Right.
And it's not, I'm not seeking that solution of like, let's, make this simmer down. It is a cry out to the Lord. It's exactly what we were talking about earlier. Like, when is it easy to obey? It's like when I'm abiding with the Lord. Our marriages will not survive without Christ.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, yeah. Praying, I think, is one of the biggest things that you will see an immediate change in even how you interact together if you try to pray together. We had a blow up just recently. I don't even remember what it's about. I just remember like hugging her and saying, I'm sorry and I love you. And she said, I'm sorry, I love you.
Yeah. And
then I just started praying, and it's just like, I don't have profound words. I don't even know what to pray sometimes. I'm like, God, we just need you.
Yeah.
We don't know what we're doing.
That's right.
So, there was two things. There's one more thing I wanted to definitely share. You shared this quote from Ruth Graham. that says, "It is a foolish woman who expects her husband to be to her which only Jesus Christ himself can be." That's stellar, and I feel like it applies also to husbands. Like, it's foolish for me to think. I mean, if I looked back at the hardest years of my marriage, it was rooted in that. Is I wanted her to be my God. I wanted her to bring satisfaction to my life and affirmation to my life in ways that only God could. And it was crushing to her and disappointing for me, and vice versa. So you ended the sermon with the story about a couple who passed down a living faith. What would it look like to build a home that reflects Jesus, not just in big moments, but in the quiet, everyday stuff? I mean, I have immediate thoughts.
I do too. I was just thinking because I want to answer it well. Go ahead.
When I think about building a home, I think about kids. I think about family. And something I've said to parents a lot is like, your kids need to see you mess up and repent more than they need to see like perfect people.
Yeah.
And so going back to the prayer thing, I think, yeah, as much as your kids need to see like healthy affection between you and your spouse, but they also need to see you like seeking the Lord together.
Man, you said that, and as you were saying it, the Lord brought this to mind. The other day, we're in the car, and we're on the interstate. It's loud. We got our son's music blaring, and my wife's trying to talk, and my son's trying to talk to me too. And my wife is like, "Not now. Wait, mom's talking." And then he keeps talking, and I raised my voice, probably too much, to be like, "Hey, be quiet. Your mom is talking. Be respectful to your mother." And I just felt this moment of like a wash of like shame. Of like, man, I just kind of yelled at my kid. I'm not like showing him to respect his mom. I'm like fear mongering him into it. I'm not leading him. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was just God's kindness in that moment, but I realized like, I think too often in those moments where it's like, you said something like that was really stabbing to your spouse, or your temper got the best of you, or you were short with your kids, or whatever, right? A moment of failure. But in this moment, I just immediately, like, I took a deep breath and I looked at my son and I said, "Hey, I'm sorry for raising my voice. Mom is trying to tell me something. Can you please wait?" And he did. Now, does he always? No, he's a kid,
Sure.
right? Of course he's going to continue to rebel. But I think too often we live in that shame.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think about what does it look like to build a home that reflects Jesus, it is hearing the voice of Jesus over and above hearing the voice of condemnation and shame. And so there are loads of habits, but it starts from a foundation of the good news being truly that good news, and looking to Christ to build it, right? To being the bedrock, the foundation of everything, and then looking to his word for the materials with which to build. I'm going to respond with understanding. I'm going to respond with compassion. And when I fail, I'm going to admit it rather than wallow in shame.
Yeah. And you asked a question at the beginning of your message on Sunday that like sat with me for the rest of the day. Like it came up, we had our weekly check-in Sunday evening, and I brought this question up of like, what are we building our marriage on?
Yeah.
And none of this happens unless you and your spouse are both seeking the Lord. This is a paradox, but it's kind of a paradigm shift that happened for me, I don't know, several years into marriage, which is your pursuit of Christ needs to be paramount as it pertains to your pursuit of your spouse.
Yeah.
If you pursue your spouse more than Christ, it's not going to go well.
Right.
It will not go well. You will never be satisfied. Your spouse will be crushed under the pressure of you asking them to be Jesus. Christ is the safest person to pursue outside of your spouse and more than your spouse, because it's only going to bring life to your marriage. Yeah. Man, really great stuff. I'm excited for the rest of this sermon series. I'm excited to be able to preach on it in a couple of weeks. And it's not because, you and I, like, and the rest of our elder team, we're like the marriage experts, right? Like that's why we're doing this. No, not at all. it's like, man, we have experienced God's kindness and God's grace in our lives, in our marriages, and these are the things that God has shown us. And we care about the marriages in our church family. We care about single people as well, and we can touch base on that. We will touch base on that in every sermon, because the reality, I was talking to you the other day about that Paul Tripp marriage book, and he has another book called Parenting. Really good with titles, this guy. In parenting, there's a part in there where he's talking about, like, are you mad at your kid, or are you mad because your kingdom has been interrupted? And several times as I was reading that book, I thought, man, this applies to marriage to as well.
Yeah, to marriage, to life. Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's because it's the gospel. Mm-hmm. And so that is like my thought and encouragement for single folks during this series, is like, this stuff is still heavily applicable to you, like, regardless of your marital status. So I'm excited to see what comes from it, but let's move on to our next section here. I got a game time. So this is a very simple this or that. So
okay.
I'm going to ask you these questions, and I'll answer as well.
I don't want to look. So.
Yeah, these are experiences, and I thought these were good categories for kind of introducing the Good Creature podcast. So the first one is forest hike or ocean swim. So not just like go to the forest, or not just like go to the ocean, but like the actual experience of swimming in the ocean versus hiking in the forest.
I think my answer normally is hike, but last year we took Sam to the beach for the first time, and he got in the water, and it was incredible. And man, that's so life-giving. And so that's really special. But I think anything I can do with him is like really fun. But I would say traditionally, Hannah and I, we love hiking. Like, it's just so much fun. And especially where we live, it's so beautiful.
For me, I like swimming. I like being in the water. And as terrifying as it is, being in the ocean, being in this like unbelievably massive body of water that can lift me so easily, it's if I asked, do I want to go to the mountains or the beach, I would say mountains like 10 out of 10 times. But do I want to go swimming or hiking? I would say swimming. So,
sure. Okay.
All right. This one is a little bit different. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset, because I don't like getting up early.
Oh, interesting. I would consider you a morning person, though.
That's funny.
Even though you don't.
I am not. I wake up happy. That doesn't mean I like to get up.
Okay.
So
I would still consider that a morning person.
Sure. So I like the sunrise, but man, so my X-39 cohort would meet on the Gulf side of Florida, and I had never seen a sunset before on the beach. Like I've only ever seen a sunrise because East Coast, and man, wow. Unbelievable. Like, I remember the first time we were there, we had a meal, and we're just sitting there, and we're talking, and we walk down the beach to talk to each other and pray with each other, and just, it's captivating, man. And then also on vacation, we were at the mountains, and we had this beautiful cabin where we could see the mountains and the sun set behind them. And it's just like, dude, that's like, it's so great. I love the sunset.
I would say sunrise.
Yeah. Which is hilarious because you are definitely not a morning person.
Yeah, I too also do not like getting up early, but there's been a handful of times especially when I was with ALG, when I was traveling all the time, if we were like even remotely close to a beach, I would wake up just so I can go catch the sunrise.
It is beautiful.
And sometimes I would do time lapse with cameras and stuff. And I don't know, it just, to me, I guess both can kind of hearken to Resurrection Weekend.
It's true.
But the sunrise always reminds me of the end of John, when Jesus is on the beach. He's like, come and have breakfast. Dude, yeah. Just the tenderness of that. And so being up early, there's a lot less people around, and it's like way quiet. And so capturing that, Jocko Willink is like, don't let the sun catch you sleeping or something like that. So there's this, I don't know, there's something kind of feel good about, like, it's almost like you're getting away with something. you're like, oh, nobody's up yet. Like I'm awake.
Yeah.
And then watching the darkness turn into light. I don't know. There's just a lot about it, but sunsets are pretty too, I guess. Okay. Rainstorm or snowfall?
Snowfall.
Yeah. I mean,
Helene ruined rainstorms.
yeah, dude, no kidding. It's like, is it happening again?
No. I mean, Hannah loves storms. Like she likes to open up the windows and stuff. If it's not like a massive storm, if it's like a thunderstorm in the summer, she loves it.
If it's raining and there's like thunder every now and then, dude.
Yeah, that's great to nap in.
Good night.
But I'll
see you in the morning.
I love the snowfall, man. I love the childlike wonder it brings out of me. I love the childlike wonder it brings out of my kid. Like it's just,
so
I love
freaking beautiful.
It's amazing.
It's like, oh, winter, all of the dead trees, and it's gray. And then when you get snow, it's like, oh man, this is a reason to be alive.
I mean, we let Sam stay up so late when it snowed, and like we knew we were going to pay for it, but it was so worth it because it had like come down so much, and it was finally like dark and like enough had settled. And we went outside and just like seeing both. Hannah took a picture of it of me and Sam like staring up at the street light, watching the snowflakes come. We're just with our tongues out. It was great.
Yeah, it's great. And then last one, bird song or rushing river.
I like birds singing. My wife always says, "Who do they sing for?" And Sammy always says, "Jesus," and that's amazing. But I would rather hear the water. I think, like I did a retreat last year, and my cabin, it was like this. I was kind of bummed because I pulled into this retreat center. And I get into my cabin and I'm like, this is awesome. And all of a sudden I hear like, pump up the jazz, pump it up. And I look outside and there's like this youth group game going on. And I talked to someone as I was like walking around and they're like, oh yeah, there's a big youth retreat this weekend. I was like, so glad I got away. Yeah.
It's solo retreat.
But I walked out of my cabin and to the left was this like really nice, like it was like a pretty active creek, and I went and sat by it, and just it drowned out all the noise, and it was so peaceful.
It is kind of like a noise canceling thing.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah, I many moons ago, like over 20 years ago, we spent a week in the high country in Colorado, and like our campsite was like next to the river, and so it made sleeping a dream, and waking up to that, and even going down and like using the water filter and pumping water into your water bottle. There's something, I don't know, like being out in creation, so helpful. But this morning I was like sitting out in a camp chair, just like on my lawn, pretty early this morning, and the birds are loud, dude. They're so loud. So I think it's time and scenario contingent. Like if I've joked with Rachel about getting me a bird, and she's like, I'm not, they will outlive us. And she's like, I'm not doing that.
Also, you have cats.
And they're so loud. But yeah, if it's like in the house and it's like 4 a.m. and the birds are like, oh, I'm going to make noise now. And it's just like, all right, cool.
You could just go bird watching.
That's true.
I have a friend who's a pastor, and that's like his hobby. And at first I was like, why? And then I like watch birds, and I'm like, I get it.
We
just watched the Lord feeds them.
We just watched this short series about a detective who bird watches. It's pretty entertaining. It's called The Residence. It's like a Clue
interesting
show.
If it doesn't have a cartoon dog, I haven't seen it. So
fair enough. All right, let's end our podcast episode with a good creature highlight. So this is literally any food, drink, activity that stirs your affection for God and points you to worship. I'm going to use one from our recent trip to the Gospel Coalition, and it's a restaurant called Kava.
You're welcome.
And yes, Billy.
Listen, this is like, I try to like stay, this is a podcast. I'm trying to like not ramble. I was given so much grief for picking this restaurant.
Okay. Here's the reason. Here's where the grief came from. I just thought we could get something healthy because we're going to be eating not healthy for most of the trip.
That's not what I said. What I said was, we're going to be in this car for 8 hours. And so rather than eating something that's going to make us all feel bloated and then be farting the whole drive, a bunch of men in a minivan, I was like, what if we got something a little bit lighter, healthy, and that like we won't feel bloated, and we'll get to the, Airbnb, we'll be refreshed. That was my thought.
Yeah. Billy kept pitching this as Mediterranean Chipotle. Wow. Alarm's going off. Mediterranean Chipotle. And I was just like, oh, I don't want to Mediterranean. Like, I want something different.
It is exactly that, though.
And did the whole van, except for Michael, snack the whole way there? Yes. So that was humorous to me. But to my chagrin, it was delicious. It was filling. And I did not feel gross afterwards. I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I just ate so much food. I'm going to die now. I can't breathe. It was delicious. And it being quote unquote Mediterranean, I'm sure it was very Americanized Mediterranean food, but yeah, it was very delicious, and it made me think of Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
I would say for me, there's a lot that came to my mind, but the one thing that's been really fun lately is Hannah has really gotten into sourdough and has been consistent with it now for several months of like feeding the starter, using the starter.
Did you guys go through like a hurricane or something?
No, that's not why. You know, what's funny is she started this before that and like kept it going, but like,
Gotcha.
It's great. She got her starter from Mike Stefanidis and she's kept it alive, and it's been really cool. And she makes muffins, and I love muffins because it's like a guilt-free way to eat cake. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just cake.
Yeah, my body doesn't know.
It's like, it's fine.
Nobody's gonna know.
It's breakfast. And she makes these banana chocolate chip muffins that are just, I know you don't like bananas, Michael, but it's okay to be wrong. They're so good. Gosh, they're so good.
Yeah.
And so that makes
Devil's fruit.
Yeah, she's made a lot of really tasty things with sourdough. Some really good. She made cinnamon bread, and it was just like subtly cinnamon.
What she needs to do is make a pizza crust.
She's done that.
Oh,
Yeah,
do it.
Yeah, it's good, man.
Key to pizza is making your own sauce too. You make your own sauce.
That's a good point.
Make your own sauce, and
we're getting ready to start our garden, and so that's something that I'm looking forward to. Is like we've done some stuff in the past. That would be a fun thing to do.
Yeah, if you like, I did a recipe once, and it was like you made your own sauce. It called for like cutting up the own meat and stuff, but I just bought.
See, we had this great food processor, like a KitchenAid food processor that was given to us. And Hannah was like making something, and she used a wooden spoon to like push something down, and then it caught the wooden spoon, and it like caused the motor to seize. And we've just not been making as much.
Yeah,
since
I don't
then because they're
typically
expensive.
I don't put wood into my food.
I did say, hey, like, why did you shove a spoon in there? She was like, I was just trying to get it to go down a little bit more. But it's like,
Turn
it's a
it
bummer.
off and then
I know.
Okay.
Hindsight's 2020. It's okay, but we
It's
don't
not
have
a wood
food
chipper.
It's funny because like it sat in our carport by our trash can for so long because neither one of us like want to give up the ghost of this great gift we were given that we don't want to throw away.
Maybe it'll work.
Maybe
we
we
try
can,
it next time.
Maybe we can fix it. Yeah.
Maybe there will be food in the fridge this time I open the door. Man, that's funny. But yeah, I made the sauce. San Marzano tomatoes is what matters, and it was delicious. So let's make some pizza. Man, what a great ending to this deep, in-depth podcast. Yeah, guys, this is the Good Creature Podcast. We hope that it was enjoyable for you. We hope that as it kind of grows and becomes its own thing, it can be not only entertaining, but helpful, practical, applicable to everyday life, and that we can more and more show how the gospel shows up in all of creation.
Yeah.
And all of creation is a signpost pointing to a country we have not been to yet, a new and better creation that God is preparing for us through Jesus.
Good. That's good. Yeah, we're excited about this as we continue. It may change a little. We're constantly kind of figuring things out. We also would invite feedback. If you are a member or attendee of Mission Church and you've got some thoughts and ideas of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? Or, if you just like think of good questions for us, we want to hear it. And again, like we said, we hope to bring some other folks on. So it's not just our faces, not that you don't love our faces, but that it's nice to see other faces and just get some different thoughts and perspectives.
We wanted this to be a bit more interactive and feature more of kind of the life of our not only just our church, but like our town, like where we're at in Western North Carolina.
Absolutely. So we're going to highlight different things. We'll talk about good hikes. We'll talk about restaurants. We'll talk about coffee. Like we're just going to, look into things.
Hopefully the room that we're in will also over time look
slightly change. We have some ideas, but we had mint green is our color.
Yeah, mint green. We had a designer come in and handpick this color from.
It really sets the mood.
Makes me want pistachios.
Okay.
All right, I think that's a good spot to end it.
See you next time.